Welcome to this journey exploring the first days after death, where the soul begins its passage into the unknown. At the moment when breathing stops and heart beats calm, a completely new stage in a person's life begins. Science explains this as cells beginning to lose oxygen, and the body starting to enter a gradual state of shutdown. But from the perspective of Hinduism and Buddhism, this event is not an end, but rather the beginning of a new journey for the soul or consciousness. In these traditions, death is seen as a passage between worlds, where the self separates from the body, just as one removes an old piece of clothing. Just as a man discards his worn-out clothes and puts on new ones, so too does the soul discard its bodies and move into others. Therefore, death is not annihilation, but a transition into another form of existence, one that may be closer to truth or illusion, depending on the nature of the previous life. After a few hours have passed since death, the body begins to lose its natural warmth and shows signs of biological change. From a spiritual perspective, some Indian beliefs suggest that the soul remains close to the body for a short while, as if contemplating what it has left behind. It is believed that the soul experiences rapid moments of recall of its past life, as though watching a fast-moving film of its actions, thoughts, and emotions. In Buddhism, this phase is known as Parinirvana, the stage that determines the path the soul will take in its next journey. If life was filled with attachments and desires, the journey may be difficult. However, if the soul had already freed itself from material addiction, it may head toward a state of peace or even merge with the universe. Many ancient Indian traditions suggest that the soul may remain close to the earthly world for a short time after death and may listen to the words spoken around it. It is believed that the feelings and words expressed by family and friends leave an impact on the soul at this stage. For this reason, some cultures advise treating the body of the deceased with respect and speaking kind words about them, even though they have already departed. It is said that the soul feels comforted when it hears prayers for it, and suffers if it hears negative speech. This gives great importance to the behavior of the living during those first hours. After death comes the task of preparing the body for its final rest. Scientifically, these are necessary steps to preserve public health and prevent decay. Spiritually, however, these rituals are seen as purification rites for the soul as well. In Hinduism, the body is washed with holy water, especially from sacred rivers such as the Ganges, considered a means of purifying the self before its new journey. The white shroud symbolizes innocence and purity, like a garment of return to the origin. It is said that these steps are not only to honor the body, but also to send a signal to the soul that the way has been cleared for it, and that it is supported in its upcoming journey. Therefore, this process must be carried out with love and a sense of true farewell between the body and the soul. In Hinduism, cremation is seen as a way to free the soul from the body, whereas in some other cultures, burial is preferred. Scientifically, both lead to the same biological outcome, but spiritually, cremation is viewed as accelerating the soul's separation from matter, releasing it to begin its new journey. Indian philosophers say that fire returns the elements to their source, while burial allows the body to return to the earth, reflecting the idea of the natural cycle of life. It is believed that the soul senses the type of rites performed for it and may be affected by them in its first journey. Therefore, it is advised that this step be done calmly, focusing on meditation and prayer rather than loud weeping. When the body is placed in the grave or burned by fire, a new stage begins known to some as Barzakh, a transitional period between this world and the next. Biologically, the body will begin to decompose naturally, but spiritually, it is believed that the soul enters a different world, distinct from the world of matter. In Hinduism, it is said that the soul enters the world of Yama, where it begins its journey through various stages before returning once again to life. In Buddhism, this phase is known as Parinirvana, a transitional period in which the soul undergoes trials that determine its next destination. Therefore, it is advised that family members increase reading and prayers for the deceased after burial, especially in the early days, because the soul may still be close to the human world. Among the beliefs widespread in Hinduism and Buddhism is the idea that the soul does not die, but instead moves from one body to another, based on its deeds in the previous life. This concept is known as reincarnation or samsara. It is said that the soul continues to wander through life after life until it is freed from the cycle and enters a state of salvation or nirvana. Science does not recognize this idea, but many people see it as an explanation for past memories, recurring dreams, and certain psychological states that seem unexplained. It is believed that at this stage, the soul may go to different realms or return to the world in a new body to continue its journey toward perfection. In the first 3 days after death, it is said that the soul returns to the earthly world 3 times, once in the morning, once at noon, and once in the evening, to bid farewell to what it once knew. It is believed that the soul visits its home, sits in its usual place, or sees those it loved. This belief is common in many cultures and is used in some rituals to invite souls with kindness and avoid showing deep sorrow in front of places associated with the deceased. It is said that the soul at this stage may feel nostalgia, anxiety, or even joy if it sees someone praying for it. Therefore, it is recommended that visits to the grave continue during these days, and that kind words be read aloud, as the soul may hear them and find peace. After a full day has passed since death, it is believed that the soul may have already begun its true journey. In some ancient Indian beliefs, the soul passes through crucial moments that determine the nature of its next world. It is said to pass through stages filled with bright light and deep darkness, facing images of its past actions as though they are being displayed before it. This is not a trial in the religious sense, but rather an internal reflection of the life that was lived. At this stage, the soul still retains some sense of time and place, but it begins to gradually free itself from them. All that once mattered in life, wealth, appearance, names, becomes meaningless, and only what it was in terms of feelings and actions remains. In the first days after death, it is advised that loved ones perform good deeds on behalf of the deceased, such as charity, quiet reading, or even simple meditation in their memory. Science cannot explain how these acts affect the soul, but spiritually, it is believed that they support the soul on its journey. In Hinduism, these acts are known as shraddha, expressions of gratitude and support for the soul during its passage into the other world. It is said that the soul senses these actions, especially if they are performed with sincerity and love. Therefore, a calm prayer, a quiet reading, or even placing a flower on the grave can have a significant effect in guiding the soul toward a more peaceful and serene state. Many people wonder, does the soul remain close to its familiar places? Does it return to the house or to its friends? Scientifically, there is no evidence for this, but spiritually, it is believed that the soul may linger around places it was attached to in life. It is said that the soul pauses at places connected to important events, or where it felt happiness or pain. This does not mean the soul is trapped, but rather that it is going through a phase of farewell, just as one might say goodbye to a home after living in it for many years. Some see this as an explanation for certain strange experiences people sometimes live through. The feeling of the presence of a dear person despite their absence. Perhaps these feelings are not illusions, but lingering echoes of the soul before it fully moves on. When a loved one dies, those left behind often feel an inner emptiness that cannot be filled. This void is not only because they have lost someone, but because they have lost part of their memories, conversations, and ways of seeing the world. Buddhist philosophers say that humans understand themselves through their relationships with others, and when one leaves, a part of the self is also lost. For this reason, It is advised that the deceased be treated with respect and that their departure be handled calmly so as not to leave a negative impact on the human psyche. It is believed that the soul senses this treatment, whether it is through prayer, crying, or meditation, and may be affected by it during its new journey. Therefore, death is not an end, but the beginning of a true understanding of the self, beyond the limits of time and matter. Even after death, it is believed that the soul retains some emotions, especially in the early days. If the soul lived a life full of love and giving, it may feel peace and calm. However, if its life was filled with conflicts and attachments, it may feel anxiety or confusion. Therefore, kind words should be spoken about the deceased, and prayers of peace should be read for them, because the soul may hear them, albeit in a different way than we do. At this stage, the soul is in a reflective state, contemplating what has passed and preparing for what is to come. Although science cannot explain how rituals affect the soul, many cultures, especially Hindu ones, place great importance on the rites performed after death. It is believed that these rituals are not only meant to satisfy the living, but also to send spiritual signals to the departed soul. Quiet readings, lighting candles, or even placing flowers are said to give a sense of stability to the soul in its early journey. Therefore, these ceremonies are carried out with care and are considered essential parts of the true farewell between the body and the soul, between the past and the future. After 2 days have passed since death, the body begins its natural process of decomposition, while the soul, it is believed, starts returning to its source. In Hinduism, the human being is seen as composed of 5 natural elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. At death, each element returns to its origin, while the soul is freed from this temporary cycle. It is said that this is the time when the soul begins to understand its true nature, beyond the limitations of the body. Therefore, it is preferred that the body be buried in natural soil or burned with sacred fire, completing its biological cycle, while the soul begins its new journey toward greater awareness. In Hinduism and Buddhism, it is believed that the soul does not end, but instead moves from one body to another based on its past actions and desires. This concept is known as Samsara, representing a cycle of death and rebirth that continues until the soul achieves salvation or nirvana. It is said that the soul, at this stage, may choose or be guided into a new body based on the nature of its previous life. Therefore, death is not an end, but the beginning of a new life, one that may be better or more difficult, depending on how one lived before. This encourages a person to reflect on their actions today, for they do not know when their next journey will begin. In the spiritual world, it is believed that memories do not disappear, but rather reorganize themselves in a different way. After death, the soul goes through a comprehensive moment of recall, seeing its entire life, not as it experienced it, but as it truly was. In some traditions, it is said that the soul remembers everything, but no longer feels the same emotions, because it is now outside the framework of the body and desires. This gives it a form of inner peace, allowing it to understand that everything that happened was part of its journey toward growth and awareness. After the first 3 days have passed, it is believed that the soul has taken its final path. Some souls may go to higher realms filled with light and peace, while others may head toward worlds of darkness or confusion. These are not heavens or hells as understood in some religions, but rather existential states that differ according to the nature of the soul. It is said that at this stage, the soul begins to adapt to a new world, one without matter, yet full of energy and consciousness. It may meet other souls and may begin preparing for a new phase, whether it be a return to earthly life or complete liberation from the cycle. In the end, death is not an end, but a transformation. Whether from a scientific or spiritual perspective, it opens new doors for us to reflect on the meaning of life, the value of relationships, and the nature of human consciousness. Science explains the body, while philosophy and spirituality explain the self. Perhaps the true wisdom in death is that we learn from it how to live better. Death teaches us how to love, how to forgive, and how to live consciously. Therefore, the first 48 hours after death are not only a biological period, but also a spiritual one, making us pause in silence before the greatness of existence, the mystery of the soul, and the beauty of life even in the moment of its passing. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to subscribe for more mind-expanding content. Together, let's keep exploring the infinite of outside reality.